Kayle Barrington Bates, spent 43 years on death row, a lifetime in limbo, awaiting the needle. To understand how he ended up there, we must rewind to the beginning, a troubled path that took root in the sun-soaked streets of West Palm Beach. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications for more gripping crime stories, and leave a comment below. Your thoughts matter. Kayle Barrington Bates was born on February 19, 1958, in West Palm Beach, Florida, a coastal city known for palm-lined streets and stark contrasts between wealth and struggle. Little is publicly documented about his family life, but what emerges paints the picture of a boy caught in turbulent currents. His cousin, Gabrielle Wise Bryce, remembers him as a polite young man with a bright spark, suggesting a childhood not entirely devoid of warmth or promise. Yet the silence in court records and public accounts about his parents, siblings, or home environment hints at a story untold, perhaps one of instability or disconnection. Was there a guiding hand to steer him? Or was he left to navigate a world unkind to a black youth in 1960s Florida? The gaps in his story leave us wondering. What we do know is that Kayle's early years unfolded against a backdrop of racial tension and economic hardship in parts of West Palm Beach. The city, while a haven for the affluent, had pockets of poverty where opportunities were scarce. There's no direct evidence of abuse or neglect, but the absence of family details suggests a lack of strong support systems. Did he grow up in a crowded home with too many mouths to feed, or was he shuffled between relatives, as many in tough circumstances were? These questions linger unanswered by the available records. By his teens, Kayle showed signs of ambition, or at least a desire to carve out a path. After graduating high school at 18, he enlisted in the Florida National Guard. He served 6 years. This decision suggests discipline, a sense of duty, a young man trying to rise above his circumstances. But something shifted. His wife later reported strange behaviors, signs of post-traumatic stress disorder after his service. The military may have left scars, mental or emotional, that shaped his choices. What happened during those years in uniform? Did the weight of service, or the lingering trauma of the Vietnam era, crack something in him? Public records offer no clear account of Kayle's education beyond high school, nor his employment before the crime. There's no mention of juvenile delinquency, school fights, or petty theft, but the lack of such records doesn't mean a trouble-free life. In West Palm Beach, systemic inequalities often limited access to education and jobs. For a young black man, barriers could breed frustration. Was Kayle a dreamer derailed by circumstance, or did darker impulses simmer beneath his polite exterior? The answer remains just out of reach. By his mid-20s, Kayle was a man adrift, his early promise fading, his cousin's memories of him as great and supportive clashing with the brutal crime that would soon define him. This contrast raises a haunting question. What turned a polite young man with a military record into someone capable of unimaginable violence? The seeds of his future, whether planted by poverty, trauma, or something deeper, were already taking root, setting him on a collision course with tragedy. On June 14, 1982, in Bay County, Florida, a horrific crime unfolded that would shatter lives and leave a community reeling. Kayle Barrington Bates, then 24, committed a brutal act that ended the life of Janet Renee White, a 24-year-old woman working at a State Farm insurance office. But what drove Kayle to this moment, and how did a routine workday turn into a nightmare? Kayle was no stranger to the area around the State Farm office in Panama City, Florida. As a delivery driver, he knew the building well, a small, unassuming office where Janet worked. On that Monday, while Janet was out on her lunch break, Kayle saw an opportunity. Court records say he broke in, slipping inside unnoticed. Was he planning something sinister all along, or did impulse take over? The answer remains murky, but his actions suggest he was lying in wait, ready to act when Janet returned. Around midday, Janet, a vibrant young woman married to her high school sweetheart, Randy White, walked back into the office. She had no idea a predator was waiting. As she answered a ringing phone ready to say hello, Kayle emerged from hiding. According to court documents, Janet let out a bone-chilling scream as she realized the danger. She fought back fiercely, her survival instinct kicking in. But Kayle, stronger and determined, overpowered her. What was going through his mind as he attacked? The records don't say, but the violence that followed was relentless. Kayle forcibly dragged Janet from the office to a wooded area behind the building, a secluded spot that shielded his actions from view. There in the dense Florida woods, the crime escalated into a savage assault. Court records describe a brutal attack. Kayle beat Janet, leaving approximately 30 contusions, abrasions, and lacerations across her face and body. He strangled her, tightening his grip until her resistance faded. He stabbed her twice in the chest, ensuring her death. In a final act of violation, he attempted to sexually assault her, though court records note he admitted to one-sided sexual conduct, with semen found on both his and Janet's underwear. He also tore a diamond ring from her finger, a cherished symbol of her marriage, and slipped it into his pocket. Janet Renee White was only 24. She and Randy had met as teenagers at a pizza parlor in Marianna, Florida. 10 weeks later, they married. They built a life together over 8 years. Randy described her as absolutely gorgeous. Her raven hair and warm presence lit up any room. She cared for people. Her sudden, violent death devastated Randy and her family. It left a wound that would never fully heal. Randy later said, "I'll never get past it. I will fight that until my last breath." The murder of Janet White was more than a crime. It was a theft of a future. A love story cut short. For Randy, the loss was unimaginable. He spiraled into grief, turning to cocaine to numb the pain, abandoning dreams of starting a family. "It destroyed me," he said. His words, a testament to the void Janet's death left behind. Her family and friends were haunted. They waited over 4 decades for justice as Kayle's appeals dragged on. The community felt the ripple effects, their sense of safety, shaken by the brutality that unfolded in a place as ordinary as an insurance office. The evidence, blood, fibers, a knife case, and Janet's ring, ensured Kayle's conviction. But it could never erase the trauma. What kind of person could commit such an act, and would justice ever truly heal the wounds? After the savage attack on Janet, Kayle didn't linger. Court records paint a vivid picture. He had just beaten, strangled, and stabbed Janet. Her lifeless body lay among the trees. Her blood stained his clothes, a damning mark of his guilt. In his pocket, he carried her diamond ring, torn from her finger in a final act of theft. Did he pause to consider the weight of what he'd done, or was his mind racing with thoughts of escape? Kayle fled the scene. He emerged from the woods, likely aiming to slip away unnoticed. As a delivery driver, he knew the area well. Perhaps he thought he could blend into the bustle of Panama City, or lose himself in the sprawling Florida landscape. But his plan unraveled almost immediately. The woods weren't as secluded as he hoped. His escape route led him straight into trouble. The discovery of Janet's murder began with a chilling moment. On June 14, 1982, a friend called the State Farm office where Janet worked. Over the phone she heard Janet's bone-chilling scream before the line went dead. She immediately called the Lynn Haven Police Department. Officers arrived within minutes. They found the office empty, but signs of a struggle were clear. Searching the wooded area behind the building, they found Janet's body, brutally beaten, strangled, stabbed. The police had walked into a fresh crime scene. But how would they catch the killer? The forensic evidence was overwhelming. It quickly pointed to Kayle Barrington Bates. Investigators found Janet's blood on his clothing, fibers from his pants scattered at the scene, a knife case, a hat, and a watch pin consistent with his watch. All recovered from the wood. Semen found on both Janet's and Kayle's underwear corroborated the charge of attempted sexual battery. Though Kayle claimed it was one-sided, most damning of all, Janet's diamond ring, found in his pocket when he was apprehended. Did he think he could keep it hidden, or was he too rattled to discard it? Despite later motions for DNA testing, even as recent as 2025, no DNA was used at trial. Kayle's attorneys argued that testing items like Janet's panties, vaginal swab, and fingernail clippings could exonerate him, maybe even point to another perpetrator. However, the Florida Supreme Court denied these requests, stating that the overwhelming physical evidence, blood fibers, and the ring, along with Kayle's presence at the scene, made it unlikely that DNA would change the outcome. The court noted that even if a Caucasian hair found on Janet's clothing wasn't Kayle's, since he is black, it could have come from casual contact, not a different killer. Was there a chance someone else was involved, or was this a desperate bid to delay justice? No prior criminal history for Kayle was documented. This worked as a mitigating factor during sentencing. He wasn't a habitual offender, but the brutality of the crime outweighed everything else, and his capture, minutes after the murder, left little room for doubt. So what would Kayle say to defend himself? He offered a shaky defense, one that quickly crumbled. During a 7-hour interrogation by Sheriff Frank McKeithen, he admitted taking Janet to the woods, but insisted he didn't kill her. His story was full of inconsistencies. The details changed with each retelling. He claimed he visited the office earlier as a delivery driver, spoke briefly with Janet, and left. But he couldn't explain why he returned, or why he was covered in her blood. His denial didn't hold up. Not against Janet's ring in his pocket, not against her blood on his clothes, not against the fibers linking him to the scene. Why keep lying when the evidence was so clear? The trial began in 1983, with Theodore R. Bowers as Kayle's attorney and Judge W. Fred Turner presiding. Prosecutors presented a compelling case, leaning on the forensic evidence and Kayle's contradictory statements. A witness testimony from the woman who heard Janet scream helped establish the timeline, placing Kayle at the scene when the crime occurred. The prosecution argued the act was premeditated, noting that Kayle parked his truck in the woods, broke into the office while Janet was at lunch, and waited for her return. The jury heard how he overpowered Janet, dragged her to the woods, and inflicted approximately 30 injuries before stabbing her twice in the chest. The emotional weight of the crime, Janet's fight for her life and the grief of her husband Randy, hung heavy in the courtroom. Could the defense find any way to counter this? They couldn't refute the physical evidence. They couldn't explain away the ring. Instead, they leaned on mitigating factors, his military service. But the brutality overshadowed it all. The jury returned a guilty verdict in 1983. First-degree murder, kidnapping, attempted sexual battery, armed robbery. They recommended the death penalty, and Judge Turner imposed it, finding 5 aggravating factors. The murder was committed during 3 felonies, for pecuniary gain, to avoid arrest, in a cold and calculated manner, and was especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel. The sole mitigating factor was Kayle's clean criminal record. In 1985, the Florida Supreme Court vacated the death sentence. They ruled that 2 aggravators weren't supported by evidence, avoiding arrest, and cold, calculated manner. The case was remanded for resentencing. In 1987, Kayle was again sentenced to death. The decision was affirmed. In 1995, after another resentencing, due to ineffective counsel, a new jury recommended death by a 9-3 vote. The court imposed it. This time, 3 aggravators outweighed multiple mitigators, including Kayle's young age, his low average IQ, and his family background. That sealed his fate. Kayle Barrington Bates spent over 43 years on death row at Florida State Prison, one of the longest periods before execution in Florida's history. His life behind bars was a stark contrast to the violent act that defined him. The prison environment was harsh, a world of concrete cells, strict routines, and constant tension. Death row inmates live in small, solitary cells, typically 6 by 9 feet, with a bunk, a toilet, and a sink. Kayle's days were likely spent in this confined space, with limited access to the outside world. But how did he fill those endless hours, and did he ever grapple with the weight of his crime? Life on death row follows a strict routine. Meals passed through a slot, limited recreation in a caged yard, and only a few personal items. Kayle Barrington Bates, described by his cousin Gabrielle Weisbryce as polite and supportive, maintained family ties even in prison. She recalled visits where he always checked on her well-being. While prison records show no violent incidents, opinions about Kayle remained divided. Former Sheriff Frank McKeithen, who arrested him, called him evil. Gabrielle, however, saw warmth behind bars. Over the decades, Kayle filed multiple appeals claiming ineffective counsel, racial bias, and seeking DNA testing, arguing it could point to another perpetrator, but the Florida Supreme Court repeatedly denied these requests, citing the overwhelming evidence against him. He also claimed ineffective counsel, unfair jury practices, and racial bias in Florida's execution process, filing a federal lawsuit against Governor Ron DeSantis in July 2025. The lawsuit, dismissed days before his execution, alleged that 95% of DeSantis-signed death warrants involved white victims, pointing to systemic bias. By then, Kayle had converted to Islam, adopting the name Maud-Dib al-Sharif Kun. Yet there is no record of public remorse for the 1982 murder of Janet Renee White. For her husband Randy, the silence left only lasting pain. On August 19, 2025 at Florida State Prison, Kayle faced his final day. Moved to a death watch cell, he spent the morning in solitude, perhaps with a simple last meal. Florida allows inmates to request a meal within a $40 budget, often comfort foods like steak, fried chicken, or pizza. He requested 2 salami and mustard sandwiches on white bread, 1 peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Did he savor the food, or was his mind elsewhere, fixed on the gurney waiting for him? As the afternoon faded, Kayle was prepared for execution. Florida uses lethal injection, a process involving a 3-drug protocol, a sedative, a paralytic, and a heart-stopping drug. At 6 p.m., guards escorted Kayle to the execution chamber. Strapped to the gurney, IV lines were placed. Florida's lethal injection protocol began, and within minutes he was pronounced dead. Florida's 10th execution of the year, setting a state record. For Randy White, it was a bittersweet closure after 43 years of grief. "This isn't about him," he said. "It's about Renee." For Kayle's family, it was the loss of a man they still loved, despite his crime. If you found this story compelling, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The case, marked by overwhelming evidence and decades of appeals, leaves us reflecting on the cost of violence and the weight of retribution. Was justice truly served after such a long wait, or does this case reveal deeper flaws in the system that demand our scrutiny? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary.